years later, your husband asked you to marry him again?
At the, you children put on a 50th anniversary party for us, and during that time, he was standing on one end, and I was just happened to be standing on the other side of the room, and so he asked me to marry him again.
And that's the room?
Yes, that's the room. We're at Denise and Ed's older place where they used to live. And so, yes, so that was kind of, well, I knew we were having his anniversary, but I wasn't sure we were going to have the ceremony again. And you children were all standing up with us when the minister performed the ceremony.
Who was the minister?
It was a friend of Jean and Jan's that was, they went to their church, and it was Mary and Haven Vox.
Oh, yeah.
And Haven was the one that married us the second time. Uh-huh. And he took some pictures. He sent them to Jean on the computer, I guess, and I don't know where the rest of those pictures are. But anyway, we have this one, and then I put a copy of our certificate of marriage down below. It's just a copy. I wrote on a copy so people wouldn't think it was the real thing.
And the real thing's on the wall in the hallway?
It's a copy also.
Oh, is it? Where's the
Well, I kept the other one. I had it at the strong box in the bank. I had it in our deposit box.
And when he asked you to marry him again, did he have a ring or anything? Or
No, it just, he'd already given me a
that
beautiful
great big
ring.
ring? Okay.
Yes, but no, we did not have that part of the ring
Okay.
ceremony. And then on the next page, we're outside. You children put on this party for us, and we're cutting our anniversary cake in this picture. And then it was wonderful that when Bill Clinton was president at this time, he and Hillary sent us a congratulatory little
Note. Like it just showed up in the mail one day.
yes, as I recall. Well, I guess they gave it to everybody who'd been married 50 years or how many. I don't know what all they did, how many they gave. But we were delighted to get
Yeah, I
that.
bet you were. And was that's the year that you went to Europe, right?
Yes, you children sent us, well, everyone else had gone home except you children, and Joan Kay were still there. And so you children gave us a trip for our 50th wedding anniversary, a gift from you children to go to the Mediterranean area, Greece and Italy, and
That was it.
that was the main thing. But then we talked you into going with us because we hadn't traveled for a while, and you had been all over traveling. So we thought, well, that's kind of a safety net too, and fun to have you along with us.
now you throw in the fun part. Okay.
Well, it was fun.
I know.
I know you went off on your own, did your own thing a lot of the times because you had things you wanted to do that we couldn't follow you in your tracks. You're too fast for us.
And you did some romantic things like the canals and
Oh, we went on the canal there in Venice, and we were in the lead boat, and there so it happened, I don't think anybody told them, but we had the lead boat, and the singer was on our boat too. And we went through the canals there, and we had a seat in the very back, luxurious seat. It just happened that way, but it was beautiful.
Do you remember any other parts that were romantic or interesting?
Oh, well, it was the whole trip was and Venice was one of the best places that I liked the most. It was very romantic, and with the canals, and then we went to an island there off of Venice, went over to island, and that was lovely. They had, where the ladies over there were sitting outside, and they were making lace. And we had seen, when we were in England, we went up to a castle up there, and they showed on the pillows, they had like pins with heads on them, of course, stuck on the pillow, and they were wound that around to make the lace. It was very interesting. And so these people on the island there off of Venice were doing, I don't think it was like that. They were probably with needles and things doing it there.
Was that Murano? Because isn't that where you saw the glass too? No?
No, Venice was where I think Jean had gotten those horses, those blown, and I think, well, I don't know if he blew them or not, but I have 2 horses Jean made when he was over there that were from Venice, that they made that blown glass and things. And so I have those 2 horses, but they lost their tail.
Oh.
I tried to get them back on, but I couldn't. Anyway, that was a wonderful trip, and we so enjoyed it. And we enjoyed having you along, but you didn't hang with us too much. I think you thought, oh, it's romantic for us. I don't know what you thought.
Was your
But you
honeymoon,
were off running and doing with some other people that we were by us. And you had found a lot of younger people that you were running with and did things with.
Okay.
And Dad and I just sloped around just by ourselves. It was fun.
So that was your second honeymoon.
Yes, it was.
And then a few years later, you went on a cruise. And was that your first cruise?
Yes, it was, and it was a cruise you children gave us. It was on Dad's 80th birthday, and you gave us a cruise. Denise and Ed had been talking about they had taken a cruise down to Mexico a few years earlier, and she kept talking, Mom and Dad, you should take this cruise. So much fun. So you folks gave us that for Dad's 82nd birthday, and mine must have been his 80th, and mine was 78th birthday. So that was our birthday that year.
Do you remember anything in particular about any ports of call or?
Well, we
shows?
were we were in Mazatlan, I think, wasn't it? Can't remember. And then after we were there, we stopped, and then we went to Mazatlan. We didn't get off the boat, I think. I can't remember.
Is that where you bought the coasters? Was it Mazatlan?
Yeah, well, I think it was Mazatlan. We got off the boat, and I couldn't see anything that was worth bringing home there, except I think I got each family, I don't know if I gave you enough, a set of coasters that were made in Mexico. Most of the things were just not worth bringing home, that I felt, anyway.
And
So that was a wonderful trip. And the boat trip was nice. We didn't have to put our suitcases on, off, or do anything with them. And then we had, was it a steward or whatever, that comes into our room and straightens up our room, makes the bed. And he'd always leave some little animal made out of our towels. It was so cute to come into. Then we went to dinner every night, and they set us at the same table every night, but I think the boat people tried to set people that were around the same age at the same table. And we sat at that table every night when we went. And I'd order, because having cooked, I could kind of feel what was tasty. And Dad would order what he thought at first. And then he saw mine and he said, wish I'd ordered what you did. And so then I think usually after that, when the waiter would come around to take our what we wanted, and I would order mine, and then Dad thought, well, he was safe. He said, me too. You want the same thing I did, because I could pick them out easier because of having cooked. But then there was a couple that were school principals, and they were a nice couple, but they kind of picked up when every time Dad would say, me too, well, they started calling Dad me too. Anyway, it was fun, and Dad was a very good sport about that. Kind of ticked me that they called him that. But anyway, then on the next page, it's picture number 224 on the top. This is when I went over to Ontario one time. I was going to come back, and Fred said, well, he and Fern were going over also. I think, no, that wasn't the time. Fred had a cataract on his eye, and he's going over to the doctor, but I don't know why they came on this one. But anyway, so Joy and Brent figured, and so Joy, Brent, and I came with Fred and Fern over to, and we Joy and I stayed at Mrs. Hogan's, and Brent, of course, he was a cute little. He's in the ring there at our wedding, and so there's a little girl across the street that just about Brent's age, and she was a cute little girl, and we'd invite her to come over and play with Brent, so Brent would have someone to play with. So everybody kind of used to tease him about his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she was a cutie.
Go ahead.
Anything more about this?
Yeah, I think is that the trip that you and Aunt Joy spied Dad?
Yes, that's the only time Joy was over there. And Dorothy Wallace and Marion Locker, who had roomed there with me at Mrs. Hogan's, well, Dorothy and Dorothy, we had formed a friendship with Marjorie Sinclair, who later married Cleo Wolfe. And so Dorothy and Marjorie found an apartment for themselves. I guess they wanted to have their own place. And then, so Mrs. Hogan kept me there. I stayed there because I didn't particularly care about going anyplace else. And so then, after a while, Mrs. Hogan was friends with a Dan McMahon, who was also a friend of your dad's, and he was a head fellow down at Crown, and Jean knew him. They were very close friends. And so Dan McMahon knew Jean was looking for a place to stay closer to where he worked down at Crown. And so Dan asked Mrs. Hogan if she would like to have Jean Wolfe, because he knew Jean and his family. And so I guess Mrs. Hogan decided it would be nice to have a man around to do some of the heavier work and to help her in the yard. So she hired him, and Joy and Brent were staying there with us at that time. And Joy and Mrs. Hogan, and Brent and I were eating at a little table in the kitchen, our lunch, when Jean came for an interview with Mrs. Hogan. And of course, Joy and I saw him talking to Mrs. Hogan, and we kind of thought he was pretty cute or handsome, whatever. And so Mrs. Hogan did say yes, Jean could stay there, and so that's how I met your dad.
And that was the trip with Aunt Joy. That's where you were heading. You were in West Lynn, or you're heading that way.
No, I was living in.
No, I mean the picture, the photograph.
What do you mean? I was heading what way?
In the photograph, was this taken in West Lynn or before?
It was right at Mrs. Hogan's place where I lived. And then the bottom picture, Eugene had a calf. I don't know the project or what Eugene would know. And he named this calf Kella, and he raised her from the time she was little and took very good care of her. I don't know whether she was a project for FFA or school or what, but anyway, he took, and I think you'll have to ask Jean that he showed her, I'm not sure. He and Colleen showed some calves at the fair.
That's what I thought.
And but I don't remember if it was Kella or not, but he named her Kella for what reason, I don't remember. And so then they tried to get her pregnant, and they couldn't. I guess she was too well cared for and too fat, heavy. And so between Jean and Eugene, they decided to butcher her, which was sad. Marilyn was there at that time staying with, it must have been when I was going back to college at Portland State. Marilyn stayed there, and then Nancy sometimes to take care of your children while I was at school. And so then this time she was helping Dad what she could butcher. You can see Dad was all played out.
Yeah.
He's
quite the
tired.
actor.
Yeah. Oh, he's an actor. He's a good actor.
He's a good actor. And Marilyn, was she shocked at all this, or she was a farm kid and so this didn't
No, she wasn't.
raise an eyebrow?
She
Okay.
was used to that sort of thing. He was
Uh-huh.
just helping. And I think she got kind of a kick out of it.
I'm not sure my vegan friends would appreciate that picture.
Well, that's
the
their
facts,
tough
Jeff.
luck.
Yeah.
You betcha.
Wow.
All right, and this is my little sister, Althea. This is her graduation from high school picture. And So about that time, I was in college and she was graduating from high school, and I think they were very close to the time I was graduating too. But anyway, Bert had been in the service, and he wanted to give Althea and I each our birthstone ring. So he gave us money to go down and pick out what we wanted. Well, I didn't care for the June. Well, Althea, I don't think she cared for it either. So we both chose another ring that we thought was prettier. Wasn't that silly? I mean,
No.
he wanted us to have our birthstone ring. I didn't like the birthstone ring. It was either a pearl or an amethyst. I didn't care for the one. And so I chose a pink sapphire ring, which
I have that ring.
that I think Carol has that ring. And I think she needed it one time, and I gave it to her to kind of help her situation, whatever it was at the time.
Pick-me-up?
Pardon me?
A pick-me-up?
A pick-me-up, yes.
And what did Aunt Althea get? Do you remember
She
what stone?
she got one that was the color of a ruby. Now nowadays rubies are very expensive, but it was a beautiful ring, and I don't know whether she had it till the last or not.
And when you showed Uncle Bert what you had bought,
He didn't mind.
didn't
I
know?
mean,
Yeah.
well, we told him that we didn't care what for the rings that were for, because I don't know whether Althea's and I were the same, because we were in the same month, but maybe hers was the 18th of June and mine's the 29th, so I don't know whether that would be the same. Maybe that's just June, the whole thing June.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's just his horoscopes. I think they go from weird date
Yes,
to weird
I
date.
know.
But I think you're right. I think stones are.
Now, Erin, Colleen's daughter, she's the same as I am, but she's in July, I think.
Oh, the horoscope. She's a
Yeah.
Cancer too. Is that right? Are you a Cancer?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so. Oh, okay. And so you're at the end. You're at the beginning of Cancer, and she's at the end.
Whatever.
Erin.
Yeah, Erin.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So we have the same horoscope. Then on the next page, picture 227, Althea, when she was in high school, was in the band, the marching band, and of course the high school band, and she played the saxophone. And I can remember her practicing in the shop that Dad had on the place there. I could hear her from my room. And toodly-doo, tweet! And that's why she was out there.
Yeah, I
you
bet.
know, learning to play it. But that was fine. She was musical, and she could play the piano too, and marched in the band. And I think my dad I thought, oh, it'd be nice. I could have an instrument too, but I think he knew I wasn't real musically inclined.
Oh, really? Because you could sing and you could.
Well,
play
I
the piano.
did that, but I was, in the piano, I played, I took lessons.
And
Anyway.
you dance. I mean, you're very
Well,
good dancer. Lots
that
of
that
rhythm.
part of musical, but as far as playing the piano, and, I think I was getting ready to go to college or whatever. Anyway, I didn't suffer any. It just, you want a lot of things when you're growing up, and it's not always wisest. And my dad was very wise in that respect, that he probably knew I probably would be good. Excuse me. I had small hands, and Alfie and Joy had longer fingers than I did.
Did you and Aunt Althea, were you close when you were young?
Oh, yes. We were home alone after Joy was gone. The boys were gone. Just Alfie and I. And those little Dickens. I used to come up. Alfie would be in the house. And she was 6 years younger than I. And of course, I was full of Dickens. I guess I got that from my dad. But anyway, I'd go up and I'd kind of scratch on the window. And poor Althea, 6 years younger, she'd scare out of her wits. I feel so bad about it. I wrote Althea a letter one time apologizing for all the...
For that?
Well, yes, I worked on my conscience that she was just 6 years younger, And I felt terrible that I had done that to her, but it was over and done with, but I did apologize to her. And the rest of these were Althea when she was in high school.
And so you were in college by then?
Yes. Well, not at first. I was probably a freshman when she was, 6 years younger anyway. So I was in college when she was in high school.
And so when you were both living at home, did you get into trouble together?
No, it's just we didn't get in trouble. Only one time, Bert was mowing the lawn with a hand mower, and he had a catch-all basket behind him that was catching the mowing, the grass. And Dad had said, well, Colleen and Bert was to empty his basket with the grass in it into this tub. It's a wash tub. It had a handle on each side. And then Althea and I were supposed to take it and dump it over into the pig pen so the pigs could have fresh grass. And so I don't know what got into us, but anyway, Althea, we had the thing full, and I said, come on, Althea, let's take this over. Well, she had an itch, and she'd have to put the tub down. And then something else, and I was nagging, Althea, come on, let's get this emptied, because I was responsible for being the older of the two of us. And so we were doing that, and I was kept nagging at Althea to come on. She'd have some other excuse why. I don't know why she did that. But anyway, Dad, it was on a Sunday, and Dad was lying on the bed reading the Bible. That's what he usually did. And he got kind of tired, nagging at Althea to get with it. So he came out, and he was, we were fussing. He did not allow that, I guess. But we forgot, I imagine, that his window was open right next. But anyway, he came out, and we both got a paddling for fussing, because we were supposed to get that work done, and we didn't. Well, me being the older, I knew it was my responsibility to see that it was done. And then she would give me a little problem. In my mind, I don't know, maybe I was a lot in the wrong too, but anyway. So Dad was paddling me first. He usually took a little green switch off of the tree, and I got mine, and Althea saw what was happening. She was going to take off, and he grabbed her and he said, don't you run from me. And so he got a little extra treatment. But those are just some of the things growing up, But I don't think we weren't arguing. I was just trying to get the work done. That's like Fred and Bert when Fred was trying to hitch up the Surrey to take the kids home, and Bert kept untying the horses from the wagon. And Fred he was older, and he had that responsibility too. So anyway, we won't go back in that time. The next picture on the next page is 230, and this is a picture. Althea came up. I kept trying to get her to come and go to college, and she didn't. She was a little more shy than I was, and so I invited her up to spend a weekend. I thought maybe she'd find out what it was like, but she wouldn't be kind of shy, but maybe she was just gung-ho on marrying Jim. But anyway, she came up and visited the weekend with us, and so that was us on the campus there at LeGrand in Eastern Oregon College. Then across from that is a picture of Althea, and she was holding Aunt Bertha's cat right outside Aunt Bertha's window. The big, fluffy, beautiful cat. And so Althea had a hold of her, and so we took a picture. Then down on the left, picture 232, Althea and I are standing by a car, and I don't know whose car it was. And I had made that dress in home ec, and I took home ec for one reason. I'd get a new dress or something.
Oh, that's a good.
And I made it, and and I had saddle stitching on this collar of I guess on the cuffs of the sleeve. I can't remember. Anyway, then the next year I took tailoring, and I made a suit.
In high school?
In high school. Mm-hmm. I had a wonderful home ec teacher that year. She was great.
And that's in front of the house in
At
Ontario.
Grandpa's house. The window up in the top was out in my room.
And so, did you have twin beds, or did you?
No, we had one bed and upstairs, and it was in the kind of the middle of the room. And we had a place to put our clothes on both sides, I guess. The ceiling was open.
Did you? I would imagine there were a lot of secrets and giggling and.
Oh well,
Told up there.
Probably kids together. But Oh, yes, I would imagine. I don't recall what they were at this time.
Yep, no stories
A
about
lot of
huge
water
boys.
under the bridge. Anyway, then the last picture, number 232, on that page is, I had come home from college, and we both happened, I don't know why we both happened to have similar outfits, so we thought that was kind of cute, so somebody took our picture.
I wonder if it's just that was the style then, and you just
Oh, it was
by
one of the
chance.
style, I don't know how, I don't remember about what the
trendy.
style was, but anyway, we thought it was kind of nice to have them. Okay, now this is Althea's wedding. When she and Mike got married, they got married at Jim's parents' home. And I think Bert gave her away because Jim's and his family were Mormons, and my dad did not particularly care for her marrying into the Mormon church. But they did, and she is wearing Helen's dress and veil. That, of course, she got married right out of high school, and of course those young kids couldn't afford a wedding, and Dad was not too delighted with the wedding, so Bert gave her away, and it was kind of a sore spot with, Alfie and Jim and their family. But
So, and Grandpa didn't even attend.
no, he didn't, because he did not, was not pleased with the wedding. So he didn't want, by going, you would think like he did approve of it, but he did not, so. Anyway, then years later, this is a picture of Alfie and Jim she sent me, and they moved to Utah, and there for a long time. She worked in the bank, and then she worked for she joined the Mormon church, and then she worked in the Mormon building for the highest fellow there. She was, I don't know, was his secretary or what, but she worked in his office. And so she did. She was a good Mormon. All right, on the next picture, the first one on the left, picture number 235, is Bert and Helen after they had been married, after they gotten married. And now in that time, when I went down to visit with Bert and Helen and I, we'd find out there was going to be some silk or nylon stockings. You have to stand in line for quite a while. This was during or after the war, and you couldn't get them go in the store because they were out. But then once in a while they'd get some in, and we'd have to stand in line to get a pair. And so evidently Helen had some silk hose on, because as I remember, the silk hose were not like nylons. They didn't stretch like nylons.
Wow.
And after you wear them a while and sit down or whatever, then they kind of bagged at the knees, and I could see Helen's must have been silk stockings because they were kind of baggy at the knees. That was just kind of a side thing that we went through during the war. You couldn't get nylons.
And sometimes you would paint lines on the back of your leg.
Well, we didn't.
Okay.
I didn't have, probably people
But some
that
women
did.
did.
Yes, but we didn't.
And so these stockings, just for the young folks, the reason they painted lines was because there was a seam there, right?
Well, the reason they painted lines is because they couldn't get the nylons, and so they painted the lines so it looked like you had nylons on.
Because there was the real ones had seams.
Oh, yes.
Seams,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, they
Yeah,
used to in those
Okay.
days had seam in the back. That's right, Carol. So then the one next to it is just a picture of Helen at her house. She had always had a garden, and I don't know why the picture was taken, but I guess somebody just took a picture of her taking care of her garden, and because they'd have hired help, and she raised corn and tomatoes, and most of the
Feed them?
that in her garden he has to help feed, but corn grew very well there in Ontario, and then of course there's enough sun for the tomatoes to do well.
I wonder if Dad took that picture, because I can almost hear Aunt Helen, after she sees Dad take it, her laughing.
Oh, could be. I don't know, maybe Dad took it. I don't know who took it. Anyway, the bottom left is Aunt Bertha again, Uncle Jim's wife, and she was the mother of Marjorie, who was a nice, lovely singer, and Evan, who was a cute
cat.
little boy, he was down at Uncle Jim at his place one time. Did I already tell that story?
With the cat story?
Yes, with the cat story. And so, but he liked motorcycles and whatnot, but he was mechanical.
Evan.
And he worked in, yes, Evan was. And one time he got hit. He was in Portland about the time I was at the hospital one time there at the Good Samaritan Hospital. And I heard from my folks or somebody had come and said that Evan was in an accident there on one of the corners in Portland with his motorcycle. I don't know. I guess he was hurt, but I don't recall that it was fatal. I don't think so. And then over the last picture, picture number 238, in the bottom right corner, is our family before Alta came to live. And we're all there. I was about 11 there, and Alfie was 6 years younger. Dad's holding Alfie, and Joy was our mom until Alta came. Then Joy got married right out of high school, and then Fred and Bert. Now, Fred was the older of the two boys, and so it was his responsibility too to see that things were done. And so one day Fred asked Bert to do something, and Bert didn't want to do it. And Dad was gone someplace working. And so Fred tried to get Bert to do it, and he just was goofing off. And so he came to Joy, and he said, "Joy, can you get Bert to do so-and-so?" Well, Joy was a peacemaker. She was a lovely lady. And so she got Bert, she went to get Bert, and he was lying on the lawn, and he's on his back, and he's kicking his feet around to keep Joy from getting to him. And then she finally got to him. She started tickling him until he was just worn out. She said, "Are you going to do it now?" Yes, I'll do it. But she could always get Bert to do things because it was her way. She could tickle the daylights out of him, and he'd laugh. And they weren't quarreling, but Fred was just frustrated because he couldn't get Bert to do the job, and he was older and responsible for what went. Then on the picture on the 229, I think that.
The one
Yes,
against Joy?
239 it is, up the top. That's Joy and David after they were married. The dress Joy is wearing is not a white wedding gown, but Alta had that dress when she was down in Berkeley. It was a formal, evidently, that she needed down there, so there's no place to wear it in Ontario. So she loaned it to Joy, or maybe she gave it to Joy, for her wedding. That was the fanciest dress we had any access to in those days because we didn't have much money. And so she looked lovely. She had a beautiful bouquet, and it was not a white dress, but it was lovely, and she looked beautiful. And then the middle picture is the whole family. After Joy and David got married, we all got together. David's parents were there, and they were Mr. and Mrs. Reese, R-E-E-S. There's no E on the end of Reese. And then the rest of us is pretty self-explanatory on that one.
But Alta's not in it. She's not in that picture. Was she there? Was that before they got married?
No, this is at married, and she was wearing Alta's dress.
I know, that's what I wonder if
Well, maybe she took the picture.
Oh,
She
okay.
probably took the picture. But anyway, yes.
And then there's Aunt Bertha. That's the youngest
Yes.
picture I think I've seen of
Yes,
Aunt
when she
Bertha.
was younger, she was tall and slender, and that's her two children beside her, Marjorie and Evan. Marjorie was a year older than I, and Evan was, of course, a little squirt.
Is that their house in, is that Aunt Joy's house below
And
that?
the bottom picture is where David and Joy lived. It was on the property belonging to David's parents, but that house happened to be there. Why, I don't remember any story about that. But they lived there for a long time until they bought a little mobile, well, it's a prefab house. I don't know, the little houses they used to build. It wasn't motorized, and it had been pulled up there and sat on their property. But it was a nice little house.
Mobile home. Is that right?
Well, it wasn't mobile. They didn't have wheels under. I don't think. Maybe, maybe they covered it all up.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, they lived up in Enterprise, Oregon, because David liked Wallowa Lakes and all that, and he and his cousin used to ride motorcycles up there to Wallowa Lakes. And Joy would stay home and feed and milk the cows and take care of the children and raise the garden and all that. So anyway, they finally moved up to Wallowa, and they had, it was a nice home for Joy, She'd lived in this little house. She never had a washer and dryer when she was there, and then when Daddy passed, some of the money that she got, she bought a washer and dryer up in in Enterprise when she was.
So she never had.
She never had a washer and dryer down there. I don't know if they could afford it. Anyway, she used to take her laundry to the laundromat and do her wash every week. She had 3 boys. Anyway.
And they didn't have they didn't have an indoor bathroom either. I remember that.
No.
Boy, I remember that. So they had an outhouse for the entire time they lived here.
Mm-hmm.
They used an outhouse.
I'm pretty sure they did. I don't remember. If it did, it was after I left down there.
I don't remember. Is this the one that Denise went to stay with her?
Yes, it is.
It looks so
When
different.
Joy was having chemotherapy, when she got cancer, breast cancer, why then she had to go to Boise, back north to Boise, to get her chemotherapy, and that was not a good idea. When after having chemo, I guess that was pretty tough on them. So we sent Denise over to help her out. Denise was about 11 years old, I think, but she could do a lot in the kitchen because she had her home. And so one time, well, Brent was there. He was, I think, well, he was grown. He was tall. He must have been about 18, 19 or whatever. Anyway, young enough that he was still at home. And so it was, Denise was to make his lunch before he went to work. And so one day she made his lunch, and evidently she'd give him some fruit in a little container, but he had no spoon. He got there, went to eat lunch, and there was no spoon in there. And so he came home, and he said, well, that was a nice lunch, Denise, but I couldn't eat my fruit or whatever it was because I didn't have a spoon. Well, then the next day, she sent probably the same type of lunch to him, but she put the biggest spoon she could get in his lunch bag.
That's funny.
Well, Ren didn't know how to take it because he wasn't raised with girls. See, and Denise was full of it, and he complained about not having a spoon,
So she gave him one.
Gave him one. It was the biggest one she could fit in his lunch pail.
That's funny. That's amazing that she had to make his lunch, though, for him.
Well, Joy,
No, I meant, why didn't he make it himself?
Well,
I know.
don't ask me about those things. I didn't do the same in my family. So, anyway, that's just the way people did things in those days. So on this next page, at the top left, Grandpa Vaught himself. That was his life, was land leveling, and he needed trucks to put things in to take to the job. And so he bought a brand new real truck. And he was very proud of that because it was brand new. And he never had a new truck. It was always hand-me-downs or what he could get at the used car lot. And then across from it, this was the day that we had Eugene baptized, and Bert and Catherine Elledge were his godparents. And so I had my going-away suit on in that picture. And Gene, this was his wedding suit that he was wearing. That's all we had in those days.
Your honeymoon going-away suit.
Yes, It was a medium yellow, soft yellow.
Do you still have it?
Oh, no, we left it in the house. Well, because when we moved down to 1060, down to Leak House, there were some things we didn't quite get everything down there. And that was there because I wasn't wearing it at the time. I remember it was hanging on a hanger. And then some of Jacob's ladder that was living there, one of those girls decided she'd like to wear it. And so that's what happened to that suit. But that's okay because I wasn't wearing it anyway.
It got used.
Well, yes, it did. And then on the below the Rio truck is a picture of Daddy, Alfie, and I and this must have been when we came back from Berkeley. That's about the time when we came back from living with Grandpa and Grandma. And shortly after that time, Grandpa and Grandma moved up from Berkeley to, it was just about maybe half a mile from Dad's up the road to the next crossroad. And Grandpa and Grandma bought, I could be mistaken, but I think it was 80 acres. And Grandpa, and he was getting close to 80 or what his age was, I don't know. But he was walking behind a Fresno with horses.
Oh, that picture that we...
Yes, well, like the Fresno you saw. Well, Grandpa was that with horses. That's what he'd done that most of his life. But here he was close to 80. Well, he died when he was a little over 80, I think. But doing all that, see, he had a varicose vein, and then maybe there was a blood clot or something. Anyway, so one night he woke up in the middle of the night and he woke Grandma up and said, his chest so hurting, he was pounding his chest. Well, he passed away with coronary thrombosis in those days. But Alta went up, and then she called Dr. Johnson, who was the doctor of theirs, of Alta's and all. That was the name doctor they used, up to him, but he did not make it over.
Was that Alta helped at that point, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
See, Alta was a nurse,
right.
And so she went up to, when they immediately called her because she would know what to do.
Okay. Look at that little red wagon, or that little wagon.
Yes, that was our red wagon. I think we brought that up from Ravendale when we moved up. And that was the one we hitched Laddie to, and my grandpa made a harness for Laddie. And somebody'd have to get out in front and call him, and he would pull us in the wagon.
And would anybody sit in?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
well, younger kids, not big kids, because he was just a dog.
Yeah.
But he could, Althea and probably myself at that time, but not together,
Right.
But,
wow.
Yeah, he was quite the dog.
And then the picture of Alta on the horse?
Oh, yes. That was the only picture that we had of her on the horse, and that's old Billy, our old horse. And Dad and the boys were making a farm for this gentleman, it was about a mile away. And so there was no house or any place to cook anything up there. It was just in the sagebrush, and they were making a farm out of it. This fellow hired them to make a farm out of this, and so they were landlobbing and what all they had to do, but no place to cook. So Alta, this particular time, she had, of course we ordered flour by the big sack because she would make bread, and
for crews.
We rarely bought store-bought bread, but when we did, it was like eating cake, after having homemade bread, which we cherish now. Yes, but in those times it was special to have store-bought bread. But anyway, so she would take his lunch in a flour sack and tie it on the saddle horn and go up and give Dad his lunch up at the place where he was working. And so this is the only picture we have of her on old Billy. And that was not too long after, I guess, that they were married. She had joggers or something that she had already.
I wish we could have.
And she had boots.
She would have been so interesting.
She was a very interesting, but she was a lovely. She was very generous, in everything. She came up from a nice home in Berkeley up to where Dad and Alta, excuse me. See, in the house that you see on the next page, there was no where you can see the 2x6s or whatever was down. That was to be the master bedroom, Dad's and Alta's bedroom, but they never got it finished, and they still didn't when Alta came up, so Alta and Dad slept in the living room. And Alta did not like mice. And one day they were in the living room where their bed was, and there was a mouse on the rafters up above, and it fell down into their bed, and she was telling it, "Don't catch it, don't turn it loose, don't." I guess Dad caught it and got rid of it. And one time I was there, just another story about Alta and the mice. I was there and in the kitchen, the children, I had been visiting. And so we came in and all of a sudden I saw a mouse in the kitchen, and that mouse ran into somebody's boot that was lying down, not a cowboy boot, a rubber boot. And so the mouse ran in there, and what did I do? I stepped on the end of it so the mouse couldn't get out. Then what do I do now? The mouse was in the boot, and I was standing. I don't remember how we got him out of there, but anyway, that was a funny story. And she was on a chair. Al got on a chair.
Because she was so afraid of mice.
She was afraid of mice.
That's
yes.
So funny, because she'd been through I wonder if she might have even been in World War I, because she was a nurse. I mean,
well, she wasn't in
not overseas, but I mean dealing with.
She never was in the service that way. She worked in the doctor's office.
Oh, I thought she worked in the hospital.
No.
Oh,
she was whatever they are, what the doctors have in their office. Anyway, she was a nurse in the doctor's office. Okay, the next page, well, at the top, it's pretty well self-attached.
Yeah.
We've seen that house before, and I'm not there in that picture, but it's Althea and the rest of the family that were there. And so then down below that is the picture of Fred and my mother, and then below is Tommy and Uncle Elmer's Bob, or Robert they called him. He's about the same age as Tommy. Tommy was 2 years older than I, and I think Robert was, we called him Bobby, or Bob, was about, he and Tommy were close to the same age. And so they had taken, Fred and Mother had taken Tommy down to Berkeley to have him fitted for braces, because he had had infantile paralysis when he was just small, and he needed the braces to put on to help him stand and walk and whatever, but that brace was on his leg. And he was just beginning to be able to run without the braces when the fire came. So that took him, and he was between 10 and 11 when the fire broke out. So it was from this age up to 10 and 11 with his braces, and he was getting so he could run and do things without the braces. So that's our infantile paralysis for you, polio. Yes. And so the bottom picture is Fred and Bert and Uncle and David, my brother-in-law, Joy's husband. Was the only picture I think they had, or the only time all of them went hunting with Dad together. Dad was so proud of that. But that was about the only time. Well, they had their own farms and a lot of things to do, so they couldn't always go. Dad was, he could shut his machinery down and go. But anyway, so then after Jean and I were married, Jean loved to go hunting with Dad, and so the two of them would. And Dad would get all worn out getting ready for the hunt, getting his horses, getting the equipment, everything they were going to take. Then by the time he got to where they wanted to hunt, Dad was so tired, and sometimes he'd get a little nauseous, and so they'd have to turn around and come home. But they had the fun of going together and getting out, and then Dad would get kind of sick or whatever.
Your dad?
What?
Your dad?
Yes, because he wanted to have everything right when they went hunting, and then Jean would come over, and they'd get Jean would help him in the final getting ready, and so they'd go, and when they got up there, I think Dad was kind of worn out or whatever, and then he had kind of tummy problems. He'd gone down to Mayo Clinics. He had ulcers at one time. Well, you can imagine.
Well deserved, yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so Jean, and he loved to go with Dad. He said, my dad was the best dad, was much better dad to him than his own dad, because his own dad had a dozen kids, and so they couldn't be that close.